Mist rides low between the pines like breath that forgot its body. The narrator, steady and close, describes the scene with quiet clarity: wet earth, needlefall, and the soft sound of a world paying attention. Jin walks alone. His robe is the color of old ember, an orange dulled by rain and shadow, the hem dark with mud. A small cloth bundle rests against his back. No blade, no staff, only a prayer string wrapped around his wrist. The temple road ends without fanfare. There is no carved milestone, no lantern marking the edge of what is known. Instead, a hush settles like a hand across a crowd. Jin steps under the first low-draped branches and the world changes. The air tastes of wet bark and crushed needles, with a faint metallic note beneath the soil. He stops, closes his eyes, and listens, not for danger, but for truth. The narrator reminds listeners of an old lesson passed from teacher to pupil. The forest does not hide what it is, it reveals what you are. The trail is less path than suggestion, winding between trunks that rise like pillars in an old, forgotten hall. For a long stretch, nothing happens, the kind of nothing that seems practiced. Deliberate. Then, without warning, the birds fall silent. Not a gradual lull, but an immediate, collective cease. Jin slows. His breath remains calm while his senses spread outward like a fan. In the mud, a fresh heavy scrape. Broken twigs that did not break themselves. A smear of black fur caught on a thorn and still damp. Something breathes that is not wind. A low, heavy exhale. Jin turns. Between two trees, a shape uncoils from shadow. A bear, massive and patient, shoulders high, muzzle broad, eyes like flat pools of night. It stands as though it knows hunger and the art of waiting. Jin does not back away. He lowers his center, feet rooting as if his soles will grow into the soil. He does not clench his fists, he opens his palms. The bear inhales and seems to taste him. Jin's heartbeat is steady and slow, the beat of a person who has learned that fear is both lesson and language. The bear moves forward, the earth trembles under its weight. Jin bows his head, not an act of surrender, nor of provocation, but of respect. From his bundle he withdraws a small pouch of dried fruit and nuts, kneels, and places it on the ground between them, sliding it forward with 2 fingers before pulling his hand back as though he expects the air itself to sting. The bear sniffs, then nudges the pouch aside without eating. It studies Jin, its stare deliberate, as if measuring him. It steps closer until Jin can taste the river stone coldness on its fur. Then, in an act both intimate and disorienting, the bear huffs a single sharp breath into Jin's face, rattling the prayer beads on his wrist. Jin flinches, barely. The bear turns and melts back into the trees, leaving the clearing quieter than before. The birds do not resume their song. The narrator points out that the woods feel less random now, as if the first door has opened. On Jin goes, following a trail that bends toward a ravine. The air cools and rocks appear underfoot. Water runs somewhere below, steady and hidden. Across a fallen log spanning the stream, Jin steps. Halfway, the log vibrates with a presence ahead. In a shaft of gray light, a lion stands. It should not exist here, wrong climate, wrong continent, yet it sits like a misfed memory. Mane damp, muscles rolling under coat, eyes pale amber and utterly composed. Jin stops on the log. The lion does not roar. It simply watches as if it has been waiting for him. Jin searches his mind for logical explanations, escaped circus, private possession, but each answer unravels under the weight of the animal's calm. The lion steps forward. Jin keeps his posture relaxed, head lowered, gaze soft. He does not flee, because running is to accept the role of prey. Stillness can make a person unknown. The lion closes the distance and, after circling him, brushes its mane against Jin's robe. A light contact that feels like an assessment. It sits on the edge of the clearing like a king that knows it's in the wrong place but will not be hurried. Jin notices a narrow path beyond the lion, a deliberate line of stones set in human hands. and understands the animal's look as direction. Go. He bows again to what the lion signifies and follows the stone-marked way deeper into trees that grow closer as if they mean to keep him. The path tightens, branches tear at the robe. The light dwindles to greens and blacks. The smell grows sharper, earth and crushed herbs. A thin dark line crosses the trail. A snake, thick-bodied with bands of darkness, head lifted to taste Jin's presence. He knows not to startle it. He shifts weight and plans to step around, but the snake moves, not toward him, but past him, coiling onto a low branch and lifting itself to eye level. Its tongue flicks. Its mouth shows the pale hint of fangs before closing. It does not strike. Jin ties a small strip of cloth to a nearby branch in a gesture of place-making and respect, then walks slowly around the snake's coil. The serpent follows from the undergrowth like a shadow with scales, not close enough to bite, but close enough to be a companion of passage. Jin does not turn back. The trail opens to a wider space strewn with the remnants of something old. Broken pillars half swallowed by roots, a carved slab leaning like a weathered tablet. Jin steps into the clearing and feels the sense of being watched deepen. Heavy footsteps register, a rhythm. From the far side a figure steps between trees. A gorilla, chest broad, shoulders rolling, eyes locked on Jin with unnerving focus. The narrator notes the displacement. Gorillas do not belong in these woods. The animal beats its chest, a deep, booming sound. That shakes Jin's ribs. Still, Jin lowers his stance, showing empty hands. The gorilla approaches until it reaches out and closes its fingers around the prayer beads on Jin's wrist, not to pull or to tear, but to hold, to question. It releases him and turns to the stone slab, where weathered characters can still be read if one knows how to look. Jin reads them. The forest tests the heart that cannot admit its darkness. The slab's message reverberates inside him like an accusation. Branches crack behind him. The animals, bear, lion, snake, gorilla, have formed a ring. They are not random encounters anymore. They are ritual, a trial the temple sends disciples into. The gorilla steps aside and reveals an opening grown from roots, a doorway into a hollow chamber. Jin crouches and enters. The interior is wider than it should be, lit by thin stripes of light. In the center sits a small wooden offering box with a single character carved into its lid, Shin, heart. Inside is a simple bell, bronze, old, and cracked. As soon as Jin lifts the bell, voices drift through the roots, human voices, low and clinical. Peering through a gap, Jin sees 4 men appear. In the clearing. Dark jackets, boots, half-covered faces. One carries a net, another a heavy flashlight, another rope. Poachers, or collectors, people who convert life into trophies. Their language is blunt and cruel. The ritual is a lure, the monk's role a key in their scheme. They intend to use the animals to corner the right target, then profit. Jin hears their plan. The monk rings the bell, animals scatter, monks imagine passing the trial, and the men take what they truly came for. The narrator's voice tightens as Jin's comprehension sharpens. The temple has commodified the forest. The bell in Jin's hand, cracked though it may be, is part of that bargain. Jin's chest constricts. He steps back into the chamber and listens to the men move, too close, too confident. If Jin stays, he may be found and the animals exposed. If he runs, they will pursue. He looks at the bell and feels the weight of what it has become. He thinks of his teacher's words, return before dawn. Return with your mind intact. He closes his eyes, then rings the bell. The first note is thin, fractured by the crack, but it slices through root and leaf and takes the clearing with it. The men freeze. The forest holds its breath, then answers. The woods shift. Branches tremble. Something large stirs. The men, now uneasy, tighten their grip on tools. Jin rings again, stronger. The bell's warped tone travels, and the animals respond, not as predictable beasts, but as guardians called to an old summons. The bear emerges, massive and intent. The lion steps from the light like a ruler returning. The snake coils close to Boots where it will be most unsettling. The gorilla arrives last, composed and implacable. The poachers stutter and then panic. Flashlights jitter. One demands answers, voice ragged. But when the animals close in, none of the men attack. They reverse, stumbling into the trees. The narrator paints their departure not as triumphant but as exposed. Human greed scattering like frightened birds. The animals remain. They are not predators in this moment, they are shields. From the temple path, Jin's teacher appears. His robe is dry. His face holds a measured calm that veers towards something harder. Two other monks stand behind him. The teacher's eyes flick to the bell, then to the animals, then to Jin. He reveals the cold arithmetic of their arrangement. Protection costs money. The temple turned ritual into commodity to survive. Jin listens as his world tilts. He sees the animals in a new light, not tools exactly, but part of a system where sanctity was traded for survival. Jin feels betrayal like winter. The teacher urges him to come back, same words, same instruction, but Jin perceives the trap. The temple protected the forest by turning the forest into experience. It trained the animals, staged trials, and sold the spectacle to buyers who believed in the ritual but did not respect the living. The teacher offers the path home again, but Jin has changed. He has seen the exchange at the heart of his training. The narrator details the shift in Jin's eyes, where there was obedience. Something else now grows, an understanding that true protection cannot be built on exploitation. A tight decision settles in Jin's chest. He lifts the cracked bell and rings it toward his teacher. The sound is jagged and uncompromising. The teacher flinches, evidence that even the architect of the bargain is not immune. To the forest's reach. The animals do not move toward the teacher. Instead, they move toward Jin and form the protective circle once more. Bear to lead, lion to flank, snake to weave the ground, gorilla to hold the back. The teacher, for the first time, sees that the ritual has been reclaimed. He steps back, breath shallow, as the plan he relied on unravels. "You will come back," the teacher warns, voice thin with that same old authority. Jin replies without words but with movement. He turns away from the temple path and walks into the darker woods. The animals shift with him. Not as instruments but as companions of intent. The teacher calls after him one last time, "Without the temple you will be nothing." Jin walks on. The narrator describes the forest closing around him, sound swallowing the last ties to the transplant world, and in that closing he sees what the true test has been. Not whether he could survive beasts, but whether he could survive the truth of those who called themselves guardians. As Jin vanishes into green and black, the narrator paints the scene's last tremor. The bell's cracked tone, heard once more, faint and remote, resonates as if the woods had claimed both sound and soul. It rings on its own, a thin echo threaded into trunks, like a vow. The dawn never comes to that clearing in the same way. The narrator leaves viewers with an image of transition. A monk who walked into ritual and walked out into a different life, animals that had been turned into props reclaiming their agency. And a temple whose moral compromise is exposed by one disciple's refusal to return unchanged. The voice guiding the story offers reflections without sermonizing. It highlights how institutions can bend principles under practical pressure, how rituals meant to test virtue can be corrupted into spectacle, and how small choices, like which bell to ring, accumulate into shapes that define a life. The forest becomes a mirror. Its creatures are not simply obstacles to be mastered, but witnesses and actors in a story of stewardship, complicity, and reclamation. Jin's final step away from the temple is not an act of abandonment. It is a conscious reorientation toward integrity that cannot be sustained by commerce or convenience. The narrator adds that the trial taught Jin something fundamental. Courage is not only the willingness to face danger but the willingness to face betrayal. To return with one's mind intact is to resist the neat answers offered by those in power and to find a path that honors living beings rather than exploiting them. The animals, already present in their ancient roles, accept Jin not as a tool but as kin. The temple, which feared the wilderness and sought to monetize its mystique, remains where it is, its doors open, its bargains made. But Jin has chosen a different covenant. With the woods, with the creatures, and with his own conscience. The closing language is gentle and firm. The narrator describes the forest's hush as a kind of blessing and a warning. Listeners are asked to imagine themselves standing at the edge of what they have always known, an institution, a family, a belief, and to consider what they might do if the truths within that space no longer aligned with the life they want to lead. Would they return unaltered, or would they accept that walking away is sometimes the only honest way forward? Finally, the narrator leaves the audience with an image. Jin moving into green shadow, companions at his side, the bell's echo dwindling and then entwining with the morning birdsong that never quite returns in the same place. Because part of that world has shifted. The story closes on the sense that trials are not only tests of strength or skill, but openings where blind obedience can be traded for deliberate choice. The woods had not only revealed Jin, they had given him a chance to choose what he would protect and whom he would become.